to be short, it completely changed everything. My professional life was completely turned upside down, you know, with changes and cancellations and, you know, all sorts of things. But it brought more, let's say, it brought more nature and a lot more of naps, you know, into my life. And that was like really, that's been nice. I'm not sure. I'm very hopeful, and I would, you know, I'm really hoping that this is going to have a lasting change on the way we sort of act and work with our clients and collaborate in general. I'm hoping that this kind of, that we can take the best out of this. Let's say, of course, it has been horrible, and this is a pandemic, so it's truly a horrible experience for all of us. But I'm hoping that we can, if we can look at it as this kind of pause, you know, I think that experience is really powerful and really strong, that we've seen, you know, nature starting to regenerate, you know, itself and heal itself. And I think that if we can somehow be more, sort of continue to be a little bit more thoughtful, you know, and mindful in what we do in general, I think that would be a really good thing, and I really do hope so. And of course, there are many things that have changed and will never be the same, you know, in our sort of disciplinary environment. Like, I mean, we're used to these conferences and exhibitions and you know, all sorts of encounters, traveling around the globe, being up to date in that kind of sense, meeting people, extending your network. And this is all, of course, completely uncertain at the moment, and so I think that for sure is changing and will have an impact on how we can move forward. I love this question. I mean, I really wish I had tips, you know, but instead maybe I have a proposal. You know, I was just wondering, what if we try and use this moment in time to sort of connect with a lot, or connect with our sort of innerst, you know, intuition, and sort of nurturing that creativity that lies within us, and somehow strengthen the bond with ourselves, and then making this stronger connection to society, to nature, you know, to understanding, sort of, I think that, you know, connecting with the fact that we are just a part of a really, really big, you know, whole. And after this pandemic, we still have the climate change and the climate change crisis to deal with, let's say. So I really hope that we can become this kind of strong voice of, you know, proposing new ways, proposing new alternatives, and because so I would like to propose that we kind of tune, you know, inwards, you know, seek for that deep connection with our intuition, and sort of, so that we can become this kind of force, you know, of creativity that proposes, you know, new ways to continue and to move forward. Yeah, both. I think it's obviously this is a really steep learning curve for a lot of disciplines, including, you know, ours. You can see it, for example, in education. You know, probably most educational systems have been, you know, pushed into the future all of a sudden, pushed into that digital realm, and so have we. I think when you're working with people that you know and you have already an established connection, it's quite smooth. you know. And in some ways it's more effective because you don't have time, or you don't want to be chatting online, you know, doing the small chat and so on. So you're like more straightforward. But it's difficult to establish new connections through this medium. I don't really see the flickering in your eyes, you know. I can't really sense, you know, what you're about if I don't really, you know. It's really difficult to connect with that very, you know, person, that very core. So I think in that sense it is difficult, but that also poses, but perhaps that's something that we could help, you know, solve, because after all this is, you know, about, you know, the design of things and, you know, how we could contribute to that. But I think in other also, if you think you were asking if it was there were opportunities in it, you know, and I think there are. I think there's a certain opening connected to this kind of way of working, that it becomes in some ways more transparent, and that I think that we might be seeing, you know, more diversity. It might be more let's say welcoming, I mean engaging, in that sense that, for example, you know, a stay-at-home mom has an easier chance to participate, you know, or let's say my kid is sick or whatever. So I think that there's a feminist issue, you know, in there. And there's no excuse like, okay, you were not around at the office, so you didn't know, so you don't know about things. I think I think it will become a bit more transparent, and in that sense more open and more, yes, it will allow for more diversity, I think. So I think that's definitely an opportunity. I keep inspired by following the global conversation within the creative community, but then also, you know, extended communities. And I'm very much interested in interdisciplinary conversations. And I think that we, as the creative community, creative people, have a lot to contribute in those bigger, you know, bigger conversations. So I think that in the beginning I saw a lot of talks and interviews and things about, I don't know, chairs and specific projects, I don't know, posters or you know, typography, you know, just like very nerdy, you know, things, like really going into specific exhibitions and so on. And then I was like, oh my God, you know, who is listening to this? Who is interested in this, you know, at this time, you know, in our lives? But then I've seen sort of the conversation sort of steadily growing towards, you know, opening up, you know, and say, okay, what are our next moves? You know, how do we want to act, and what do we want to, you know, push? What do we want to contribute? And so I think that's been really inspiring to see all these also actors, like bigger actors in the field, like, you know, MoMA and you know, Design and Frame magazine, and, you know, these kind of that how they've kind of, you know, how they're proposing all sorts of discussions and constant conversations about, okay, we don't know what's next, you know, we don't know. And, you know, sort of, I think it helps me at least. And I think, you know, the community to sort of, feel, you know, that you belong to a certain community, that we care, and that we care about, you know, the future, and that we want to do good, and that we kind of, it makes it that we're embracing, you know, the uncertainty as we've been claiming for years and years on, that we're really good at embracing uncertainty. So I think this has been really testing in that sense. Oh, and then I also go horseback riding. That's sort of a huge, that's probably my deepest source of inspiration during these times. Well, I've been thinking a lot about change. I've been thinking a lot about our relationship to change and with change, you know. So over the years, we've been referring perhaps to ourselves as creative agents or agents of change, or that we really have, and designers, if I speak, designers and creative people have tremendous power and tools to sort of mobilize people to communicate difficult phenomena, complex phenomena, and so on. And now I've just been thinking, you know, now the agenda has perhaps been a lot about, you know, we need change, right? Now we have changed. Everything is changed. So what are we gonna do? What sort of role does an agent of change play in when everything has changed? So I think it's really tremendously important for us to give it, you know, some deep thought. You know, where do we want to position ourselves? How do we prevent not only ourselves, but also, you know, the people we work with and our societies and everything? How do we prevent us from just falling back to, you know, the old systems, you know, the old pillars? Because there's a hunger for, of course, to get projects, to get going. I mean, it's our livelihood, of course. Everybody is, you know, thirsty to somehow continue. But I think it's our duty almost to show the world that we need to come up with alternatives, and that we can do that, because we need to think out of the box. And I think, you know, as James Fredrickson, I think, who, like, after the financial crisis, he was saying that it's actually more difficult for us to come up with a new type of capitalism. It's more difficult to come up with that sort of ideology than to imagine the world going under, you know. So it's somehow we need to. I think it's our duty to somehow figure out how we're gonna be able to facilitate regeneration. You know, how can we process? How can we continue to feed sort of the prosperity of the planet and its people, you know? I think we're at a certain crossroads here, like everyone else, and I would like us to take that stand and sort of be thoughtful and brave about it.